As a startup CFO, you know why it's important to think in financing rounds. It is a question of how many shares do I have to give away, what control do I have to give away, and so on. So at the very end, what you might want to do or have to do is managing your financing rounds. And first of all, it's a question of money, and secondly is a question of additional value. So let's step in with an example. How do you get funding in general? 3 young professionals, these guys, they founded Innocent Drinks. And we all know Innocent Drinks right now because we're gonna buy those smoothies in supermarkets and so on. But when they started the business, nobody thought they can be successful. Because, to be honest, the beverage market is full of people who have great ideas, want to sell their own drinks and so on. Well, so as an investor, actually, the regular reaction is, why should I finance another drink company? There are enough drinks out there. And that was the same experience they made when they started from Cambridge University and rewrote the business plan many, many times, always were turned down, and then really wrote, and that's a fun story, a desperate email with the subject line, does anyone know anyone rich? And they obtained the first $250,000. That was their first financing, but they were really successful. They made $1 million in sales in its first years, which is really, really a lot for a drink startup in that sector. So the investment was probably worthwhile. That was a typical angel or equity capital. But actually, we get to the point, what's the difference? So if you look at all those big companies, we had the Facebook example, but then talked about Peter Thiel and he founded PayPal before. We had Skype, Google, Amazon. So all those companies had to finance their business and had to ask the same question at the very beginning: where do I get the money from? And you have so many sources. You have your friends or your family. We talked about the angels. And there's a new thing called crowdfunding nowadays. You can also go to a VC. When you go to a VC, they're a strategic investor. And even, as I said before, you can make your own money, finance you by yourself, by customer money. So how do you decide on that? Well, there are many aspects you have to think about. The two main aspects, which are really important. The first aspect is, where do you get which amounts of money? And to be honest, family and friends money, and this is from the Timmons book on new venture creation, is restricted. Timmons says 250,000. I think it's restricted a lot more. So if you are not living in a rich family, and most people are not, you won't get more than a couple $1,000s to start your business from your family and friends. But maybe it's worthwhile. It's worth building your own prototype with very, very, very little means and show some proof that your idea might work out. Very helpful for the valuation in further rounds. Because if you need more money, you probably have to look for other investors, and you still can look for private individuals, but not the ones who you're related to, but informal investors, especially business angels. And even their money is restricted. There are very rich business angels out there right now, but you remember Peter Thiel's investment, 400,000. So typically it's restricted to 500,000, maybe $1 million. Maybe they go bigger rounds if they do follow-up rounds, but in most cases they don't, these angels. But they help you in very, very early days, and we'll get back to that later on. So if you need more, you have to look for other sources, venture capital, strategic investors, or even different sources like a private placement. Facebook did a private placement once, I think driven by Goldman Sachs, and they placed privately some shares outside the US, and you can go for other markets. Very important, if you look at that, you'll see more money on the one hand, you'll see on the other hand less risk of the capital. So in general, for the small rounds at the very beginning, valuations are low. If you can realize higher valuations, it is necessary not to give away too many shares for those higher amounts of capital. That's the one aspect. The aspect of where do you get the money from? The second aspect is what else do you get except money? Remember the innocent drink story, for example? The guy who gave him 250K, a business angel. So what does a business angel do? And I'd like to talk more about that, but in brief, angels normally they have the two wings, that's what we say. And the one wing is for capital, the second wing is for additional support. So the second aspect of additional support plays a role in early stage financing. Why is that so important? Because think about yourself as an entrepreneur. You're able to do great things. But on the other hand, you're not able to do other things. I'm from an engineering background and I have a business administration background. I can do some things right, but if I invest in medicine technology, for example, or start a startup there, I do not have any clue in this sector, or I have to learn these things. So it always lacks capabilities in startups, especially in those early days where those small founder groups or those small startup teams start their business. You can never have all the capabilities a large corporation has. So actually you need someone who helps you. You need an angel who sets up your company. And I always talk about my first company, that internet out of print book business. We started that in 1999. Actually, not many people knew how to do business in the internet, but a couple people knew that because they started earlier than we did, and they were our first investors. And they were a tremendous help for us. When I started my first medicine technology startup, we took other people on board who had experience in FDA CE certification because we knew we needed that one day. These are typical examples for support in early days setting up a company. And the support may change over time. So if you go to a later stage investors like venture capital, maybe they have a big network or strategic partners, have a customer base or so. What I'm basically saying is that this is the second aspect which one has to take into account when doing financing. It's about the money on the one hand, and it's about the additional help on the other hand. This picture of the business angel, remember the wings, money, informal help is very good for the whole entrepreneurial finance topic because it describes what it is about. And actually, you as an entrepreneur, you need that, especially in the early days because you don't have the capabilities. When you grow your company and you have thousands of employees, you probably have all the capabilities, so you don't need that anymore. But in early days, you need that. And this is also, by the way, a constituent aspect of entrepreneurship, the owner-manager dominance, in a positive but also in a negative way. This is why in entrepreneurial finance, this second aspect plays a big role. And for a startup CFO, this is also something you have to balance. So not only the financing, but also the capabilities you get into your business.